everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we officially kick this off, I do want to point out to the audience that we welcome questions. Please post them in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and we will address those at the conclusion. I'd like to now turn this over to Steven Saltzstein, Force Family Office's CEO.
I just wanted to come on and tell everybody what a person of high integrity Jim Joyce is. I've had the pleasure of working with Jim for over 2 years. And look, I could sit here and tell you that, everybody has great science, and Jim does have great science, and he has, a lot that's already proven. But there's not too many folks I'm going to come on and give a personal endorsement of for being a person of integrity, a person of his word, one of the hardest working people I know. And, he just does what he says he's going to do. And he is 1,000% a person that people can trust. So with that said, it is my great pleasure to welcome Jim Joyce, CEO of Sigyn. Thank you, Jim.
Stephen, thank you. I'm humbled by your introduction. I truly appreciate it.
I calls them as I sees them, my friend.
Thank you, Stephen. So before we get started today, I encourage you to look at our forward-looking statements, which we have made available on the presentations button on our website, SigynTherapeutics.com. With that said, if you're not familiar with our company, we're developing next-generation blood purification therapies to address unmet needs in global health. The focus of today's presentation is to address the unmet need to treat endotoxemia and concurrent inflammation, which are prevalent yet untreatable conditions that shorten the lives of end-stage renal disease patients. There are over 550,000 ESRD patients in the United States that receive approximately 85 million dialysis treatments each year. Their annual mortality rate is 20%. So once they become dialysis dependent, that means the average lifespan is 5 years. The two leading causes of death in this patient population are cardiovascular disease and sepsis. And endotoxemia and concurrent inflammation underlie these two conditions. And for dialysis patients, after they've been undergoing dialysis for a while, they start becoming chronically inflamed, which means each time they receive their treatment, there's an immune response that causes an excess production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. These individuals also have compromised intestinal barriers, which during inflammation, it increases the permeability of these barriers, and it allows for bacterial toxins to leak out into the bloodstream. And this includes endotoxemia. And this phenomenon creates a chronic loop of endotoxemia and inflammation. In response, we developed Sigyn Therapy to address a broad spectrum of clinically relevant therapeutic targets for these disease conditions. And among public companies, I'm proud to say that Sigyn Therapy is the only technology demonstrated to address inflammatory cytokines, bacterial toxins, again, including endotoxin, and viral pathogens. And these have all been demonstrated to be removed from human blood plasma. Other attributes include the fact that when we designed Sigyn Therapy, we designed it for deployment on the global infrastructure of dialysis and CRRT machines already located in hospitals and clinics. The technology is highly efficient. Average sized person, the bloodstream processes through our device about 15 times during a 4-hour treatment. You might not appreciate that, but this corresponds, our optimal treatment flow rates of the bloodstream corresponds with those of dialysis. And for that reason, we can incorporate our device in series with dialysis therapy without having to make any major changes in how it's administered. And our device has immense capacity. Within it, we incorporate a formulation of adsorbent components that have approximately 200,000 square meters of surface area on which to adsorb, bind, or capture our therapeutic targets. And to give this some perspective, that's approximately 50 acres of surface area in each product, in each device. So the potential value of Sigyn Therapy to the dialysis industry, it's quantifiable and it's compelling. Two leading players in the United States are Fresenius Medical Care and DaVita. Fresenius has approximately 200,000 patients in their ESRD network. And based on an annual cost or annual revenue stream of $60,000 per patient, each month of extended life of their patient population is worth $1 billion in added revenues. These patients also spend quite a bit of time in the hospital each year. And when they're in the hospital, they're out of network. And Fresenius in DaVita loses money. For each week of reduced hospitalization, that would allow Fresenius to recoup approximately $250 million in revenues. For DaVita, the numbers are even bigger. They have 280,000 patients in their US network. And for each month of extended life, based on average annual revenue per patient, that's worth $1.45 billion in increased revenues. And for each week of reduced hospitalization, that's worth $362 million approximately in recouped revenues. So our clinical plan, we're preparing to submit a breakthrough device application to FDA. There's no assurance that that'll be awarded. However, I do have experience of being an author on 2 previous breakthrough submissions that were both awarded. We have our investigational device exemption drafted to support our feasibility study with FDA. And in this study, we're going to enroll 12 to 15 ESRD subjects at 3 site locations. This includes Hartford, Connecticut, Las Vegas, and San Antonio. And our device will be administered in series with regular dialysis treatments. So these patients are already sitting in their seat 3 times a week, 4 hours of treatment. They already have blood access. It's going to be pretty straightforward to enroll these patients. It's not as if we're trying to enroll sepsis patients in the ICU and waiting for them to show up. So for this reason, our clinical protocol should be efficient and effective in execution. Primary endpoint is demonstration of safety, but our secondary endpoints will be looking at changes of endotoxin levels and inflammatory cytokine levels. And we will be collecting data related to changes of blood chemistry when patients are on dialysis alone, and then looking at those changes in blood chemistry when we include our device in series. And we think the successful completion of this study will be a major value inflection point, and it sets the stage for a pivotal study. And as a class 3 medical device, a pivotal study is the study required for market approval. So it sets the stage for a pivotal study in this ESRD patient population, but it also provides a potential pivotal pathway in the non-ESRD indications. And so beyond those indications are infectious viral pathogens, of which most viral pathogens that are infectious to humans are not addressed with an antiviral drug. And we currently have quite the collection of looming threats that are brewing out there at present that could cross over at any time. And then sepsis, this is the leading cause of hospital deaths in the United States. 1 in 3 hospital deaths is attributed to sepsis, and it costs our US government between $65 to $80 billion to address each year. So we think successful completion of this study from a clinical progression standpoint, historically how things are valued in the marketplace, we think this could be an instrumental achievement in creating value for our shareholders. I also want to share the public market landscape for public blood purification therapies. As I mentioned earlier, among public companies, our device is the only device that's demonstrated the ability to remove bacterial toxins, inflammatory cytokines, and viral pathogens from human blood plasma. But I think it's important to recognize, what other companies have done ahead of us and recognize their presence in the marketplace. And I'm not using them as a market comparable because that wouldn't be fair. They have much more significant collections of data at this point. But I will start with bacterial toxins. Our colleagues at Spectral Medical with their PMX endotoxin removal device, they currently have a market value of about $180 million, which is 27x our current market value. They just completed their sepsis treatment study. It's called the Tigris study, and they should have a readout in about 3 or 4 months down the road. This is a very promising study and a well-led company. And if they're successful, it could have a very positive impact on us and the rest of our industry. But I bring this up. Here's a device that is solely capable of removing endotoxin and none other targets. In regards to inflammatory cytokines, cytosorbents, their cytosorb device is well documented for removing inflammatory cytokines. This is a great management team. I worked with them for 5 years in a Department of Defense DARPA contract related to the treatment of sepsis in wounded warfighters. During COVID, their peak market value was about $700 million. It's pulled back considerably since then. But again, the focal point, cytokine removal. And in regards to viral pathogens, Athlon Medical, the hemopurifier, pioneered the field of extracorporeal blood purification to address viral pathogens. Peak market value of this company was about $200 million during my tenure as the CEO of the company. And that's probably, approximately 30 times our current value. And again, Sigyn Therapy, when we designed it to address bacterial toxins, inflammatory cytokines, and viral pathogens simultaneously. Our team, it includes extracorporeal thought leaders across management, our board of directors, and science advisory board. Our development pipeline is focused on oncology. Our lead product there is ChemoPure to reduce chemotherapy toxicity. Chemotherapy is the most commonly administered drug to treat cancer. ChemoPrep to optimize chemotherapy delivery, and Immune Prep to optimize the delivery of immunotherapeutic antibodies, which are the top-selling drugs in cancer. Unfortunately, they're poorly delivered, and we have a strategy to improve that. In terms of public market data, stock symbol is SIGY. We're fully audited, fully reporting company, and our audits are under PCAOB. Recent price, $4.15. There's our price range. Thing you probably want to know is that we have just a little over 1.6 million shares outstanding, and more than 90% of our shares outstanding are held by management, 2 funds, and 1 group of angel investors. And our 2 funds and angel investment group have continued to keep building their position by providing us support. At present, we're now looking for quality long-term investors that are accredited, that might want to participate in a convertible note offering, a 10% note, convertible into our common shares at $4 a share. This comes with 100% warrant coverage, and the use of proceeds will include funding the feasibility study of endotoxemia and concurrent inflammation in ESRD patients. So in conclusion, we're developing next generation blood purification therapies to address unmet needs in global health. And by the way, I should point this out, I missed it on the last slide. If you're interested in an offering memorandum, text your email to 619-368-2000, and I will leave that phone number for you to address or send your email to us. So with that said, I'd like to open up the floor for Q&A.
Thank you, Jim. So from a regulatory standpoint, is Sigyn Therapy considered a combination product?
That's a really good question. No, it's not. It incorporates non-biologic adsorbent components. And by doing so, that saves us quite a bit of a regulatory hurdle. I have dealt previously with a product that incorporates an unapproved biological agent, and it becomes much more challenging to navigate your product forward with both CDRH, which is the medical device division of FDA, as well as the biologics group. The challenge becomes much more significant. So when we designed Sigyn Therapy, we went out of our way to make sure we were not including unapproved biological agents.
Thank you. You mentioned extending the lives of ESRD patients. Do you anticipate that you might also improve their quality of life?
I that's another good question, and I wish I would have brought that up. The inflammatory response to dialysis, in some cases, it's much like the flu. The patient has an inflammatory response. It increases the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. That creates permeability in the gut, allows bacterial toxins to leak into the bloodstream, which further triggers the immune system. So it's almost like having a flu. A lot of these patients, they'll feel fatigued after treatment. They'll want to go to sleep, and it's a very challenging lifestyle for these individuals. So yeah, we certainly hope to improve quality of life as well.
Thank you. While your clinical strategy seems compelling, can you establish scalable manufacturing to support your clinical programs?
Yeah, absolutely. We were very cognizant when we designed Sigyn Therapy that we had to have a device that the active components were components that we could actively access, and that the core component of the cartridge itself was already in the marketplace in a different application. So we would be working with FDA-approved contract manufacturing facilities that already have GMP manufacturing systems in place, and we would leverage their quality systems as a specification manufacturer. And all of the components of Sigyn Therapy are already scaled. And so it's just a matter of configuring them and providing the right types of sterilization and packaging technique. So very good question. And it's a big, important advantage that we have with Sigyn Therapy.
Thank you. When do you anticipate beginning the pivotal study, and what is the timing for completion?
I will start the timing for completion. At the point we initiate the study based on 3 site locations, based on 12 to 15 patients, we would anticipate the enrollment period, the treatment period, would be a period of about 4 to 5 months. And I try to be somewhat conservative based on previous experiences and expectations on what the clinics think they're going to do and what's reality. So I try to be very balanced in that answer. The actual initiation of the study, that's our process through FDA. When we file our IDE, we don't expect FDA to give us the green light right out of the blocks. We expect there'll be a round of comments, with FDA, and that could take upwards of 4 months or so.
And what is the dollar amount needed to get through regulatory and to be commercial?
So we know the cost of our feasibility study is approximately $1.25 million, not including the manufacturing of our device. So that is somewhat of a low bar challenge. Until that study is complete, we won't know what our pivotal study design will look like with FDA. And once we're successful in completing our feasibility study, we will submit our final package to FDA. Then we initiate discussions with FDA regarding a strategy for a pivotal study strategy. But we don't know, what that strategy will be. I can tell you historically with extracorporeal devices that are class 3 devices, pivotal studies can range from 50 subjects to 300 subjects, usually of which half the subjects are control subjects. But I can't give a timeline and cost until we know what those pivotal studies going to look like. I would add this. I believe personally that the relationships we've established in the dialysis industry, that if we can execute on our feasibility study, I think there's a reasonable possibility of having support from the dialysis industry itself, just based on the potential impact our device could have. And for one of the leading companies, it could provide a major strategic competitive advantage.
Thank you. And how are you superior to any other devices that you mentioned in the ESRD space?
Well, in the ESRD space, I need to point out we're not treating end-stage renal disease. We're treating endotoxemia and concurrent inflammation, which occurs in both end-stage renal disease patients, but these are also underlying factors that play a significant role in sepsis and a wide range of other conditions. So, yeah, at present, the focal point is ESRD because it provides an early clinical pathway and opportunity, but it's really much more expansive than that.
And how is Sigyn prioritizing pipeline development while navigating near-term pressures like timing and demands of early commercialization?
Yeah, we're in discussions with groups on potential collaborations to help advance our pipeline. We've been very focused on IP underlying our pipeline, but in some components, like for example, immune prep, this is a pretty straightforward process. I think incorporating immunotherapeutic antibodies inside of a device, our strategy is to pre-treat a patient prior to infusion of their therapeutic antibody to sweep out circulating decoys that bind or sequester the therapy from reaching their intended targets. And for most of these immunotherapeutic antibodies, you'd be shocked to know this, but generally no more than 3% of the drug actually gets to its therapeutic target. And while these are considered revolutionary drugs, this is a major point as to why most people don't respond to therapy. And we believe that incorporating an immunotherapeutic antibody within a device to sweep out decoys that are sequestering the delivery of the drug prior to the subsequent infusion of the drug, we believe that is a strategy that's very executable, straightforward from an engineering standpoint, and quite honestly, a strategy that if we demonstrate, effectiveness through a series of in vitro studies, it could drive relationships with the drug industry, which leads me to point out something historically about our space in general in terms of extracorporeal blood purification therapies. Something that distinguishes us from a lot of our colleagues previously in industry is that we try to be as thoughtful as we can about our device being important to somebody else's business model, that we can impact the business model of an established industry and not be in a situation where maybe we create a life-saving device that we can get across the goal at FDA, but it doesn't impact somebody's business, and we're going to be stuck trying to build a market for that device, manufacturing it. And that's not, historically, that has not been a major value driver in our industry.
Thank you. And what's the total addressable market for your device beyond ESRD?
Well, the I hate to make those projections. You can look these up all over the map. Clearly, the ESRD opportunity is an early clinical and commercialization opportunity that could be an important technology to an established industry. But when you get to things like sepsis in oncology applications, the numbers are really big. I mean, again, sepsis is the #1 cause of hospital deaths. And our colleagues at Spectral Medical with their PMX device, the study they just finished, we think they have a reasonable chance of getting approved. And remember, there is no approved therapy under FDA for treating sepsis at present. And so that could have a big impact on us and other players in the industry if they can get that across the goal. And I think they have a reasonable shot at doing so. But the overall addressable market opportunity, I mean, I think just common sense would say leading cause of hospital deaths, oncology, it's large, and I don't need to, try to project it, on my own, because there's a wide range of projections for these different indications.
Do you have a minimum investment that you would consider?
The minimum investment in our And our offering is $25,000.
That concludes the questions. If anyone else out there has additional questions or wants to be connected to Jim, please reach out to me. Everyone out there has my email address. In turn, he will have all of your information as well. And Jim, I'm going to turn it back over to you for any final words.
Yeah, Callie, I'll point out, well, I'll finish off. I'll
Sure.
point out on this last slide, the Q&A slide, at the bottom left-hand corner, if you want to reach out to me directly by email, it's jj@SigynTherapeutics.com, and Sigyn is SIGYN therapeutics.com.
Great.
And with that, I appreciate everyone's participation today. I hope you'll follow our company going forward. I think we've positioned ourselves quite favorably from a clinical standpoint. Obviously, now I hope you'll watch us work on executing as we move our product and products forward towards marketplace. So I thank you for your participation today.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you to the audience. And I hope everyone has a great day.